Nobody in that audience knew what was about to happen. The lights of Britain's Got Talent were bright, the judges were settled into their seats, and Simon Cowell sat with that familiar look on his face, the one that says he has seen it all, heard it all, and very little can surprise him anymore. Then a young Filipina girl walked out onto that stage, and everything changed. Her name was Emma-Sophie. She was small in stature, dressed simply, her hands clasped together in front of her like a quiet prayer. The audience gave her the polite, uncertain applause that strangers give to someone they have not yet decided to believe in. A few people smiled encouragingly. A few others shifted in their seats, already preparing for something forgettable. But Emma-Sophie did not look nervous. She looked ready. There is a difference, and the cameras caught it, that stillness behind the eyes that belongs only to someone who has spent years preparing for a single moment. The host asked her name. She answered softly. She was asked where she was from, and she said the Philippines, and a gentle murmur moved through the crowd, that reflex of curiosity that always rises when someone has traveled far to stand in front of those four judges. Simon asked her what she was going to sing. She told him. And then he nodded, leaned back, and the music began. The first note came out of Emma-Sophie and the room stopped breathing. It was not the note itself that caused it, though the note was extraordinary, it was the certainty behind it. There was no trembling, no hesitation, no reaching. The sound simply arrived, full and open and completely in command of itself, as though it had been living inside her for years and had finally found the door. People in the front rows turned to each other with wide eyes. A woman near the back put her hand over her mouth. And Simon Cowell, the man who has made a career out of controlled reaction, sat up in his chair. Emma-Sophie sang like someone who understood that music is not about showing off a voice, it is about making people feel something they have been carrying without knowing what to call it. Every phrase she delivered was intentional. Every breath was placed. The melody moved through the auditorium and touched the walls and came back changed, warmer, as though the room itself was responding to her. By the time she reached the bridge of the song, the audience had stopped being polite and had started being moved. There is a difference there too, and everyone inside that theater felt it. The judges were watching her with the kind of attention that cannot be performed. Alicia Dixon had tears forming at the outer corners of her eyes. Amanda Holden pressed her lips together and shook her head slowly, the way people do when they are trying to hold on to something beautiful before it ends. And Simon had not moved. He was watching Emma-Sophie with an expression nobody had seen on him in a long time. Not the skeptic. Not the critic. Just a man listening to something rare. When the final note came, Emma-Sophie held it. She held it past the point where most singers would have let go, past the place where comfort ends and something truer begins, and she held it there in the air above that audience like she was giving them a gift they did not expect to receive on an ordinary Tuesday evening in London. And then the note ended, and the silence that followed lasted exactly one breath, and then the entire theater erupted. The standing ovation came immediately. Hundreds of people on their feet, applauding with the kind of energy that says this was not entertainment, this was an experience. Emma-Sophie stood at the microphone, her chest rising and falling, and she looked out at all of those people who had not known her name 4 minutes ago and were now clapping for her with everything they had. She pressed her hands together again, the same way she had when she walked out, that quiet prayer, and she bowed, and her eyes were full. Simon Cowell leaned into his microphone. The room grew quieter, the way it always does when he is about to speak, because everyone knows that his words carry weight and nobody was sure what he was going to say. He paused. And then he said what no one expected. He said that in all the years he had been sitting in that chair, across all the seasons, all the countries, all the thousands of auditions, what Emma-Sophie had just done was something special. Not promising. Not interesting. Special. He said she had a voice that was not just technically impressive but emotionally true, and that those two things rarely exist together in the same person. The audience responded with a fresh wave of applause. Alicia spoke next, telling Emma-Sophie that she had walked out looking like a shy girl and had transformed into someone completely different the moment she sang, that the stage clearly belonged to her. Amanda wiped the corner of her eye and told her that the Philippines had sent them something extraordinary. And Emma-Sophie stood there and listened to every word, and she did not try to play it cool or act surprised. She simply received it, with grace, the way someone receives something they have worked for but never taken for granted. Then came the votes. Yes. 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 For yes, and the golden confetti that rains down in those moments when Britain's Got Talent recognizes that something historic has just occurred. The confetti fell around Emma-Sophie like a celebration the universe had already scheduled, and she laughed, a real laugh, not a performed one, and looked up at the lights and the falling gold as if she were trying to memorize every second of it. Nobody in that room walked out the same way they walked in. That is the only measure that matters. And Emma-Sophie, a Filipina girl who had crossed oceans to stand on that stage, had just made Simon Cowell speechless, and in doing so, had made the whole world pay attention.